As y'all know by watching this show, I have a ton of New Year's resolutions. But stopping one-way drivers is the number one priority on the New Year's resolution list. In Ennis Jocelyn, there was a one-way driver accident that happened on the exit of Ennis Jocelyn. Take a look at this.
Those driving themselves are reminded to be careful on the roads and pay attention to traffic signs. Earlier today, a wrong-way driver caused a head-on crash right at the exit of Ennis Jocelyn. A gray Jeep was heading north up the feeder road when it collided with a red Equinox. The driver of the Equinox walked away from the accident unharmed, while the wrong-way driver was taken to a nearby hospital with only minor injury.
Minor injuries. He could have just told the police everything that happened. Walked away with minor injuries. If he told the police, they wouldn't be in this situation. Also for New Year's Eve, we need to keep in mind
and a reminder
of the veterans, the people who serve our country. Take a look.
And a reminder here, it is important to be mindful of our local veterans as you ring in the new year with family and friends this weekend. If you do plan to set off fireworks, know that the sound of fireworks, or even the smell itself, could lead to anxiety or even panic attacks for some vets. Now, if you are a veteran and know that these sounds or smells can be difficult for you, now would be a good time to have a plan in place for a safe, controlled space.
If that happens, it's important to try to control that anxiety attack, right? Breathe as much as you can. Think of something that may veer off from the actual anxiety that you're having, right? A family member, an occasion that was great for you, something that'll completely take your mind away from that actual anxiety. So calm yourself.
Now, if you feel as though you don't have anybody to call, you can always reach out to a fellow veteran to help you walk through this time. The Nueces County Service Veterans Office is there to help, and their number is 361-888-0820.
Wow. I would also my New Year's resolution, no drinking and driving. Which is why taxis are offering free rides of No Refusal Weekend. Free New Year's Eve rides. I mean, y'all gonna go out, y'all gonna go party, y'all gonna go get drunk. Take a look.
Several law enforcement agencies across the state are cracking down on drunk drivers this weekend. With the No Refusal DWI initiative, officers will be out in full force to arrest any DWI drivers.
All right, so if you do plan to drink, have a plan for getting home. That could include appointing a designated driver or maybe calling a rideshare service. Also keep in mind that Green and Go Cab will once again be providing free rides home. That begins at 9 p.m. on New Year's Eve and goes until 3 a.m. New Year's Day. Again, that service is meant to get you home and not to another party. The number to call there on your screen, 361-299-9999.
Again, that is a free service, so take advantage of that. It is safe.
Or call your parents. Have a friend put in place. Designating drivers is common sense. I mean, we talked about being drunk, drinking, and driving. I mean, it's very wrong. A lot of accidents have happened. Teachers have been arrested for drinking while intoxicated. A lot of teachers have been doing that. But drinking and driving is the big no-no here, because if you were to drink and drive, that'd be you. Let me tell you this: if you are going to start to drink, you need to put in a plan to where if you drink too much, you need to find a friend that will drive you home. Do not attempt to be drinking and driving. Do not attempt. Cabs will help. You have Uber and Lyft that will help you. Call your parents. Call somebody. Call an Uber. Call your mom. Don't drink and drive. It's not fun. It's not cool. To you, it may be cool to be riding a motorcycle on the edge of Grand Canyon. Boom, boom, boom. Ah, have mercy! Boom, boom, boom. But what we all have to do is make sure that this does not happen. I'm going to have the safety reminders about that for you on a future show. Or maybe later in the broadcast. But we have to make sure that this does not happen to anyone. I mean, if, like I said before, if you're going to sell fireworks this New Year's Eve, you need to make sure you don't do the city limits. No gunshots. Because the way you point that gun, it shoots at somebody, they're dead, and you're in jail for murder. That's the way it is. That is the way. That's the way it is. I get it. You want to celebrate New Year's? You may tell the police, "Oh, I was just celebrating New Year's. I didn't know the gun was pointed." Probably because you were too drunk. It's how that person years ago, it was on Dateline, or Dateline Court TV Network Schools, like we showed you. He was in prison for what he did. It's our next Throwback Thursday. But the Benny Hinn story is not done yet. When we return, where is Benny Hinn's money going, and what does Benny Hinn have to say? Bob McEwen has evidence that will trace the Benny Hinn ministry and where the money is going. Stay with us. Yesterday, I brought you the story of Pastor Benny Hinn, who's one of the three televangelists who takes the money from the collection plate and just spends it on whatever he wants, like cars, houses, whatever. If you saw the previous broadcast, last two broadcasts, we focused on Larry Lee, Robert Tillman, and W.V. Grant. The ministers who just promise easy money, but they're frauds. They say they can be like Jesus, healing people. But with Benny Hinn's case, he's probably in league with one of the three. I want to make this clear. We're not questioning the faith or anyone's faith. We're basically showing you where the money goes, because let's face it, if you're watching this and you say, "Well, I was a former member of the Benny Hinn staff," whatever, feel free to leave this in the comments below, and on our Give Me a Break feedback, we'll read you some of your comments. Or on our next Throwback Thursday. So, now that we've seen what the hidden camera footage, you're also going to see what happens where does the money go? Because a lot of you are asking me, well, if he's taking the money, where does it go? Bob McEwen is going to tell you. Once again, here's Bob McEwen.
Remember Mike Estrella, who was the head usher at Hidden Crusades? He says one night, the ministry's chief executive officer offered him a wad of cash taken from the collection.
How much money? 1,000.
According to Estrella, the man who took that money from the collection buckets was Pastor Benny's right-hand man, CEO Gene Polino.
I just push it back. One day, he told me these words. He says, "Mike, if you follow me and listen to me, I guarantee one thing. You never have to work again."
After that, Mike Estrella says, he began to watch Gene Polino more closely.
One time, Polino says, "Give me all the hundreds and all the 50s." And I did that. And many of that went to his pocket.
How do you know that?
Because I saw him doing it.
In a telephone interview, Gene Polino, now retired as Hidden CEO, denied those claims. So you say all the cash was deposited?
The only thing that wasn't deposited was loose change.
Gene Polino told Dateline he has no problem with Mike Estrella, but that the former Hinn head usher sometimes got confused. But 2 years ago, in a deposition given under oath, Benny Hinn's own brother, Christopher, seen here helping to count Crusade collection money, testified he too saw Gene Polino regularly stuff $50 and $100 bills into a bag, and also testified the CEO told him, "Don't worry about it." Both Christopher Hinn and Mike Estrella say they don't know if Gene Polino kept the money they described seeing him take. But Gene Polino told us none of it ever happened, insisting he never took any money from the collections. You categorically deny that?
Surely.
Polino was never charged with any crime, and the ministry says he did not engage in any wrongdoing while employed by the church. Christopher Hinn and Mike Estrella both say they told Benny Hinn what they saw, and we wanted to ask him about it. Through his lawyers and spokesmen, Hinn repeatedly turned down our request for an interview. We finally approached him outside his hotel after a crusade in Buffalo last year.
Pastor Hinn, I'm Bob McEwen from Dateline NBC. Can we board with you? We'd like to arrange an interview. As you know, we've been trying to contact you. Well, we'd be pleased to do it at any time you'd be available in the near future. But as you know, we've been trying to do this for several months now, and we haven't had much luck with you.
No. Hey, gentlemen, please.
We seem to be having a bit of a problem with your security detail here.
I'm sorry about that.
We did eventually get a final answer from Benny Hinn to our interview request. It was still no. Christopher Hinn has left the ministry after a dispute with his brother, and the church says it's had no further dealings with him. As for those other former Hinn insiders, head usher Mike Estrella and security man Michael Cohen, they say that when they tried to complain to Pastor Benny about abuses in his organization, they were fired. In another letter from its lawyer, the ministry says Mike Estrella's allegations are unfounded and unsubstantiated, and that he was acting irresponsibly, maliciously, or suffered from some impairment when making the charges. As for Michael Cohen, the ministry says he is motivated by a misguided personal vendetta against Pastor Hinn and the church, and called him an unstable and unreliable source.
What would he say now about you and the things you're saying about him?
He may tell people that haven't been around for years that I'm a disgruntled employee. Fact is, when I first started working for him for over 2 years, I wouldn't even take a paycheck.
Do you believe that he has healed people?
No.
Or that people are healed because of him?
No, I don't. I believe that people have been healed. It's God's power, it's not Benny's. Benny, in the last couple of years, wheels this power around like it's his power.
Cohen and Estrella maintained they were true believers who put their faith in a man they thought could bring hope and healing to millions.
What I saw was a big business rolling millions of dollars every year, many people getting rich, and the rich getting richer, and the poor getting worse.
But then there's Carlotta Moore, a pastor herself, who says, like millions of others, she still believes in Benny Hinn.
Pastor Benny's job is the work that God has called him to do, to be that mediator, that channel for that anointing that God has placed on his life, the work that God has called him to do, to carry that work out here on earth.
Stand up, lift your hands, and receive from heaven in the name of Jesus.
To find out what the Benny Hinn Ministry says about itself, or to learn more about the Christian watchdog organization, the Trinity Foundation, go to our website. You can also find out how some of your favorite charities are spending your donation dollars. Our address is dateline.msnbc.com. And that's all for this edition of Dateline Friday. We'll see you again for Dateline Sunday at 7, 6 Central. I'm Stone Phillips, and for all of us at NBC News, good night.
But there's probably more to Pastor Benny Hinn than meets the eye, as you'll see in this next story.
Benny Hinn, world-famous televangelist. Your legs will work again. He's celebrated as a healer, but who has he healed? Plus, startling new inside information about the millions he raises and the money he spends.
How does Benny Hinn spend his time? Shows. He shops.
Bob McEwen with The Preacher's Wife.
That story when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to more of our look into Benny Hinn. If you have been watching the previous episode, you know if you've been channel surfing or you've been to one of his rallies years ago, you may have seen him. But if you watched the Dayline episode back in 2002 and this one you might see right now back in 2005 or 6, you might have realized what's been going on then. We're talking about Benny Hinn. If you watched him before, we looked at the way he heals people, acts like Jesus, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But if you ever wonder where the money goes, and what does he use the money for, you're about to find out now. Once again, here's Bob McEwen.
Everyone standing, sing with us then sings my soul, my Savior God to thee.
If there's one thing Benny Hinn knows, it's how to make an entrance. Center stage, in the spotlight, and always when they're singing the hymn, How Great Thou Art. And whether you measure success by the attendance at his crusades, or the money he raises, Pastor Benny, as he's known to his followers, is unquestionably one of the most popular and successful televangelists in the world today. And at every crusade, you can't help but be struck by the faith of those followers, who listen to Benny Hinn's preaching, join him in prayer, and who hear Pastor Benny's stories of miracles.
But surely as God is God, your legs will work again, and your body will be healed again, and your lungs will breathe again, and your eyes will see again. This is your day.
His daily TV show, This Is Your Day, taped in his own studio, is broadcast around the world. And here too, it's all about miraculous healing.
Emphysema is getting healed. We rebuke it in Jesus' name. Somebody's legs have just been healed.
Hinn's promises of miraculous healings attract believers and their money by the millions. Public estimates of the ministry's income range from $89 million to upwards of $100 million a year.
I say he's in the business of raising money and spreading his own celebrity.
Ole Anthony heads the Trinity Foundation, a Christian watchdog group based in Texas that examines the workings of television ministries. A Christian himself, Anthony is highly critical of TV preachers who don't divulge the details of how they raise and spend their money. And though Anthony says he believes in God's power to heal, he's challenged ministers like Benny Hinn to prove the truth of the miracles that they put on TV. He has been on the record time and time again as saying he is not the healer.
Of
that
course.
it's God who heals.
Of course.
He's just the vessel that's been chosen.
What's the reason that people come to the Crusades? What's the main thing that happens on stage? That's his attraction. He promotes himself as a healer, as a healing ministry.
To help prepare our original report, Dateline asked the Trinity Foundation to provide access to, among other things, documents and videotape like this that it's collected about the Hinn ministry.
The fire of God, my brother's gonna go through you.
We reimbursed the foundation for its costs. We also went looking for some answers ourselves. For almost 2 years before our first broadcast, Dateline sought permission to videotape Benny Hinn's crusades to see how this affluent television ministry really works. Eventually, we were allowed to bring our cameras to this one crusade in Atlanta, but we were told we could only film Hinn's entrance, some singing, and some saving of souls. So, in order to try to find out what really goes on behind the scenes of the Benny Hinn ministry, we attended a number of other crusades and walked in right through the front door with everyone else. Only this time, we had hidden cameras.
Welcome to the Henry Collins Theater.
About once or twice a month, somewhere in the U.S., 50 or 60,000 people attend one of Benny Hinn's two-day crusades, all taped for broadcast on his TV show. For 2 years, beginning in 2000, we followed Pastor Benny around the country to Hampton, Virginia, Las Vegas, Buffalo, and a few cities in between. At each crusade we attended, everything seemed to build to the one big moment when Pastor Benny told the crowd God was speaking to him, revealing a multitude of miracles then taking place throughout the arena, some of them very specific. In that first broadcast, we showed you that before the lucky few were allowed on stage to reveal their healings to Pastor Hinn, they had to be screened by a ministry staffer. This screener is a doctor, and he evidently thought this woman was a good candidate to announce her healing up on the platform with Pastor Benny.
No pain? I will embrace it. You can do that.
The people selected by the screeners were then introduced to Benny Hinn and the capacity crowd and proclaimed their healings.
No pain.
Oh, okay.
And wherever he goes, those who've been healed are given a blessing by Pastor Hinn with his own personal touch. Soon the faithful are strewn across the floor like bowling pins. So we asked, what exactly was at work here? Hinn critic Ole Anthony says he thinks it's a phenomenon that has more to do with mass hypnosis than any kind of healing.
And they watch him on television over and over and over for years. And they see it, they expect it. They see other people upstage are falling over right and left. Sometimes Benny falls all over the place, just a circus. It's like professional wrestling.
But behind the circus atmosphere, there are hundreds of people at every crusade that the TV audience doesn't see.
Desperate people, really desperate ones, the ones that break your heart, are in back of the crusade. They won't let them up in the line.
But then we ask, what happens to those who do get up on stage and who have their healings announced by Pastor Benny? To try to find out, we attended this crusade in Las Vegas. By our count, there were 56 miracles in all, many of which ended up on Hinn's TV show and on this videotape we purchased through the ministry. There was this woman. Hinn said God told him a demon had given her cancer, and he cast it out.
Come out of her! It's gone!
And there was this woman who said she was cured of lung cancer.
She had cancer of lung. And she don't have it now.
And
oh, there's more.
then there was this little boy named William, who became the star of this crusade when he told Pastor Benny his damaged vision had been healed.
And as soon as God healed me, I could see better.
He didn't seem to be especially moved by the youngster.
Our ministry should do all possible to help this boy financially, to even pay for his education.
The question is, despite all those claims, how does anyone really know if William or any of the others truly was miraculously healed? The ministry has said it has a process to verify miracle healings that is, quote, exhaustive and thorough. So we asked Pastor Benny to give us the material verifying the 56 healings we counted at that crusade in Las Vegas. By the time we asked, he'd already broadcast many of those Vegas miracles around the world on television.
I want you to go back to your earthly doctor. I want a full story.
But if he knows the full story about who was healed in Las Vegas, he didn't share it with us. In a letter from its lawyer, the ministry declined to provide proof of any of those Las Vegas healings to Dateline. The ministry did give us information about 5 healings from other crusades spread over several years that it claimed had been documented and verified. But when we investigated them, though all 5 people told us they believed they had been healed, they wouldn't or couldn't provide medical records to support any of those claims. So then we did some more checking of our own. For example, that woman we met in Las Vegas who said she'd been cured of lung cancer. With our hidden camera, we were able to go backstage to observe the ministry's follow-up interview with her.
Now, what happened tonight that makes you feel God touched you?
She was asked a few questions, but it didn't appear to us that there was any medical examination.
Keep trusting God. Follow it up with your physicians.
Thank you so much. The Lord bless you all.
Unfortunately, there is one thing we were able to determine about this woman without the ministry's help. 2.5 months after the crusade, she died. The cause was lung cancer. We also introduced you to Belva Ventura. Benny Hinn said her cancer was cast out at a crusade in Massachusetts.
I was healed. I know I was.
According to her doctor, Belva Ventura died of that cancer shortly after our interview. But whether those miracles are verified or not, the money pours in at Benny Hinn's crusades. While the crusade continues on stage, backstage, the money is totaled up. The take often in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
One side cash, one side jacket.
Though Hinn refuses to make his financial information public, he has said that every dollar given to his ministry goes to the work of the Lord. Followers like Carletta Moore in Delaware told us they have no doubt that's true.
We're not giving it to Pastor Benny. We're giving it to the ministry to do the work that Pastor Benny has been entrusted to do.
Be that as it may, Benny Hinn does manage to live very well. His home is this mansion overlooking the Pacific Ocean, built and paid for by his ministry. According to building records, it has 7 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, and more than 7,000 square feet of living space. The ministry told us the mansion was its parsonage and a good investment. According to area realtors today, it's worth about $10 million. And when Hinn goes to crusades around the world, he travels in this private jet. According to documents we obtained, the ministry pays more than $112,000 a month to use the plane. And closer to home, Pastor Benny still travels in style. This photo obtained by Dateline shows him getting out of a Mercedes SUV. And here he is driving a Mercedes convertible. Both cars retail for about $80,000. That's some of what we told you in our first report. But since then, we've received new information from deep inside the Hinn organization. And others have come forward to tell us that we only scratched the surface when it comes to Benny Hinn, his money, and his miracles. Listen to what this former Hinn insider says.
There was never one complete record that would suit the criteria for a documented miracle healing.
And something else came our way since our first report. Hundreds of pages of ministry expense documents. And this man who traveled the world with Pastor Benny.
There's a tremendous amount of money that's spent on things other than putting on the crusades and the TV program for himself.
Pastor Hinn
When we come back, both of these men tell their sides about the money that Benny Hinn has spent on those documents, and learn some New Year's Eve safety tips from the Corpus Christi police captain. Stay with us. Returning on to our story. In the first report that you saw, the surface was barely scratched. Now, there's more to the story than meets the eye. If you watched that first report this from years ago, or if you watched this episode where you saw this report today, you may have realized that your money may have gone to that ministry, and Benny Hinn may have spent a fortune on that house. What does Benny Hinn have to say? You're now going to hear his response to Dateline's request for an interview, and you will also see that videotape from the last time that he saw the report on Dateline. Once again, Bob McEwen.
I thank you, Lord, that Dateline was not kind to me. And I pray for these men who came against us.
Within days of our first report, Benny Hinn took to the airwaves with a 3-hour live broadcast responding to our story. We had questioned whether those miraculous healings were real.
Your doctors have confirmed your healing.
Oh, yes. But on his show, Hinn featured this man, Raymond Scott, who claims he was healed of colon cancer at a crusade in 1994.
I wonder why NBC did not talk to you.
Both CNN and Dateline have contacted me, but they never follow up. They never ask to see the evidence of what God has done.
So then are they really interested in the truth?
To my experience, no.
What Pastor Benny didn't tell his audience was that Mr. Scott was one of those 5 supposedly documented and verified healings that the ministry sent us for our first story. We did talk to Mr. Scott, and we tried to talk to his doctor, but though Scott had given his permission, the doctor declined. Neither the doctor, Mr. Scott, nor the ministry provided us with any medical information that could verify a miraculous healing in Raymond Scott's case. And we've discovered something else about those miraculous healings since our first report. It turns out that at the very same time Dateline was trying to verify those miracle healings,
that's why she's scoffing.
This man says he was trying to do the same thing from inside the ministry.
They told me that they were going to provide me access to their private records of over 200 doctor-documented miracle healings.
Nathan Daniel is a documentary producer and a Christian who says he believes in miracles. Daniel told us he was hired by the ministry to do a positive TV documentary to bolster its image. The script, he says, was to focus on Pastor Benny's good works, including miracle healing. As part of his research, Daniel says he worked closely with the ministry's miracle follow-up division.
I explained to my supervisor that I would pursue developing the script in journalistic fashion, would ask hard questions, and would want to receive the answers thoroughly to avoid criticism by media in the future.
Daniel told us he set criteria for verification of a miracle healing, proof of the illness or disease in the first place, evidence that there was a miraculous change, and documentation that the healing had continued. And when you applied those criteria to the hundreds of cases they said they had, documented and verified, what did you find?
I went through the file I had in my possession for a number of days, and there was never one complete record that would suit the criteria for a documented miracle healing.
Michael Horton is an evangelical Christian and a professor of theology at Westminster Seminary in California. He edited a book called The Agony of Deceit, which took a critical look at televangelists, including Benny Hinn.
A lot of people, I think, who watch Benny Hinn or watch the TV evangelists more generally think that what they're saying is authoritative. After all, they're on TV. And they've written books, and we've lost a capacity to think critically and to weigh people in the light of what the scriptures teach.
And at every crusade and on every broadcast, Benny Hinn's followers hear stories of miracles from their pastor's lips.
You better get a handkerchief today. You're going to see what God did in Las Vegas, especially to a little boy named William.
Remember William, the boy who said his deteriorating vision had been healed at that crusade in Las Vegas?
And now your eyes, you can see better?
That night, Pastor Benny went beyond just declaring William cured.
Our ministry should do all possible to help this boy financially, to even pay for his education.
But almost 3 years after Pastor Benny's promises, William's family says their boy hasn't received a dime from Benny Hinn.
We don't need his money. You know, I can take care of William.
Randy Melfratter is William's uncle and guardian.
He made a promise to the world and to my little boy, and I just think it's right that he does what he said he was going to do.
According to Randy Melfratter, after a year of calling the ministry, he was finally told a fund of $10,000 had been established. But he says he never received any verification of that, and that the ministry refuses to give him any more information. And Melfratter also told us he's upset that the Hinn ministry has been raising money using William's name. In an email to us, the ministry maintained there is a $10,000 account, and that William's family can have access to it. Further, the ministry claims William's family had demanded $1 million, which his uncle vehemently denies. As for his boy's eye condition, Randy Melfratter says at first William believed he had been healed. But a couple of weeks later, he asked William if his vision was really any better.
He thought about it for a second. He goes, I think God's just taking a break. And that to me was like, you know, that's a heck of a thing for a little boy to have to make excuses for why God hasn't healed him.
Chapter 1. My cat eats kitty fritters.
William is now 13 years old. Randy told us he has a degenerative and incurable eye condition called retinoschisis. But William can see better these days. What's made the difference? Not anything that happened at that crusade, but
Glasses. I'm glad they could find, because my old doctor said they couldn't find a prescription for me.
thanks to those special glasses, William doesn't have to use Braille anymore and leads a fairly active life. In the meantime, Pastor Benny has millions of followers who donate millions of dollars to his ministry, not only to help him preach the gospel, but also, as he says, to feed and clothe thousands of children around the world. But that's not what that former Hinn employee says he found.
To me, this was a fraud and deception being put across the people that are his donors.
How many children does the ministry support?
Are his donors.
Coming up next, this former employee tells a very disturbing story about Benny Hinn and his promise to help out the children in need. Stay with us. We're now returning to our look at Benny Hinn. One former employer is willing to tell his side about the fraud that he made. He made his promise to help out the children, but as you'll hear from this former employee, there's a different side. Here again, Bob McEwen.
You may want to give a little more, because, ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful part is that you stood with me all these years. I'm a little behind on my TV stations. And
After our first story aired, Pastor Benny sent his followers this fundraising letter.
He said there had been a 10% drop in donations because of the Dateline story. He began a major fundraising campaign, explaining he needed more money to pay for TV time.
But in fact, the need is $2 million I must have right away.
This ministry is touching the nations with...
On HIN's broadcast after our first story, a ministry staffer maintained that some of that money is spent, not just for TV time, but for good works around the world, every day.
20,000 children are fed and clothed and taken care of on a daily basis by Benny Hinn Ministries.
But remember Nathan Daniel, the TV producer hired by the ministry? He told us that in 2002, when he asked for verification of the thousands of children cared for by the ministry, he was given this email from a ministry staffer. It listed just 247 orphans. Daniel said that left him wondering how many children the ministry actually supports.
And that troubled me deeply. To me, this was a fraud and deception being put across the people that are his donors.
He says shortly after raising questions about the ministry's good works and its healings, he was fired and escorted from his ministry office by armed guards. Daniel lost the first round of an arbitration with the ministry for wrongful dismissal. He's appealing the decision and writing a book about his experience.
Amen.
For its part, the ministry sent us this video of the ribbon-cutting ceremony for its new orphanage building in Mexico. And after the tsunami disaster, Hinn announced that during his 3-day crusade in India, he would deliver a check for $250,000 to aid victims of the tragedy. Dateline has also confirmed that the Hinn ministry donates $20,000 a month to this hospital in Calcutta. In addition, a hospital spokesperson said over the years, Hinn has given 2 lump sum donations totaling $200,000.
Free medical care completely is covered by the Benny Hinn Ministries.
That may sound like a lot of money, and in India it certainly is. But the donations for tsunami aid and the money given to the hospital are only a tiny fraction of the tens of millions of dollars the ministry takes in each year. These documents, Hinn ministry sources, and our own reporting may provide some answers as to where at least some of that money goes. Our confidential sources told us they wanted these documents made public because they're upset by what they say they see going on. Pastor Benny's lavish lifestyle, supported by ministry money.
Every dollar you give this morning is going to the work of the Lord.
What we got were ministry expense documents for 2003 that are a kind of snapshot of how Pastor Benny spends his life and the ministry's money when he travels. But even with these documents, it's not easy to follow the money. Many of Benny Hinn's expenses were signed for by his director of security, using a ministry corporate credit card. But we didn't take the documents at face value. We set out to independently verify the information they contain, to confirm where Hinn stays and how he spends money.
We have all heard from the Lord that the days ahead are dark days.
According to the expense forms and multiple ministry sources, when he travels, Pastor Benny registers at hotels under an assumed name. A look at these documents shows that while he's on ministry business, Hinn stays in luxury hotel rooms.
God will anoint his ministers tonight.
At this crusade in Milwaukee, the documents indicate Benny Hinn occupied the presidential suite of the Pfister Hotel. The hotel told us the room cost $990 a night. At a crusade in Panama, the documents show, and we verified with the Intercontinental Hotel, that Hinn was in the Royal Suite. The published rate, $1,700 a night. At a crusade in Montreal, we verified Pastor Benny was ensconced in the Royal Suite of the St. James Hotel. The regular rate there, $2,700 a night. The room is as big as an average house, 2,200 square feet, including a makeup room, dressing room, and a piano that plays by itself.
And partners, thank you for helping us go around the world.
The ministry told us some hotels allow Pastor Hinn to stay free of charge or at a discounted rate because the ministry or his followers are paying for a block of other rooms. And as Hinn supporter Carletta Moore, a minister herself, told us in our first report, she has no problem with the style in which Pastor Benny travels.
I'm pretty sure NBC's man that owns NBC probably got his own jet and multi-million dollar, probably got houses here, houses there. And I believe that the preachers of the gospel, I believe they should live better than even NBC's president.
Not surprisingly, Hinn critic Ole Anthony has a different view.
It's just a lifestyle. He believes he deserves it. His board of directors says it's okay. So what are you going to do?
And when they rationalize it by saying, after all, he's the head of a $100 million a year organization.
It has nothing to do with it. You're called to be a servant, a bondservant of Christ, not to live like a king.
And we found some other trips that seem to have little to do with spreading the word of God. This man says he was with Pastor Benny as he traveled the world.
When he goes to the Pacific area, he stops in Hawaii. When he goes south of the United States, he stops in Cancun.
Living well from Beverly Hills to Milan.
He stops in Cancun.
Coming up next, this man tells his side about how he spends his money. Meaning Benny Hinn. We'll be right back. There's one more person to this side of the story, and then the documents are going to be revealed. This man says he knows what Benny Hinn spends, and now he'll get to share it. Again, Bob McEwen.
That is glory! That is glory!
Whether he's at home or traveling, Benny Hinn can often be seen in the finest places.
When he's not on the road, when he's not presiding over healings or saving souls, how does Benny Hinn spend his time?
Shops.
He shops.
Shops.
This member of Hinn's security team, who we'll call Steve, and whose appearance and voice we've disguised, says he traveled with Pastor Benny and personally escorted him on shopping excursions.
That's something we joke about all the time, that you have this income, this wealth, and all you do is shop.
According to Steve and other ministry sources, Hinn is a regular at Beverly Hills clothing stores like Versace, Louis Vuitton, and Bijan, where Hinn's name is on the window along with princes and heads of state. Then there are the cars and the mansion. Hinn has acknowledged he's paid a salary of somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million a year. He also gets royalties from the sales of his books. But there are questions raised by some of the purchases we found in those expense documents. For example, in just over 4 weeks in 2003, we found 6 separate charges at high-end clothing stores totaling more than $6,000, all charged on the ministry's corporate card. Since Benny Hinn declined to make his ministry's finances available to us, we hired our own auditor to help interpret the expense documents that we obtained. Keith Balla is a forensic accountant with the firm of Rosenfarb Winters. He's a kind of financial detective who tracks money through organizations like churches or companies. Balla also audits a number of religious groups and non-profit organizations. He told us neither he nor his firm have had any dealings with Benny Hinn's ministry.
Suits for Benny Hinn. Possible legitimate expense or not?
Clothing could be, especially for TV broadcasting. But if he's wearing it for dinner in a regular course of his living, then it wouldn't be.
But there's a lot more than clothes in those expense documents. Remember, while he's at a crusade, Pastor Benny stays in presidential and royal suites. The ministry told us that every single trip made by Pastor Benny is approved by his executive board. But we were intrigued by what appear to be stops made by Pastor Benny at resorts and spas around the world on his way to and from crusades. The ministry called these stops layovers. Now, for most of us travelers, a layover means long hours waiting for a connection in an unfamiliar airport, maybe an overnight stay at a low-rent hotel. But remember, Pastor Benny travels in the ministry's private jet and sets his own schedule. So consider Benny Hinn's version of a layover. On his way home to California from this crusade in Colombia, the documents show, and the hotel confirmed for us, Pastor Benny stopped at this resort in Cancun, Mexico. He stayed in the presidential suite there that cost the ministry $2,684 for one night. The trip was described as a layover.
When he goes to the Pacific area, he stops in Hawaii. When he goes south of the United States, he stops in Cancun.
Steve remembers another layover in Cancun that he made with Pastor Benny on the way to a crusade in South America.
I made the comment, I thought this was a vacation, and I was told it is,
He said another security man told him this was a business expense because Hinn held meetings there attended by ministry board members who also flew in. After those meetings with the board members he had come to join him in Cancun, what did he do?
He tanned. Went to the beach and tanned after having one of the security people rub tanning lotion on it.
And here's another example of what may happen to some of the money people give to Benny Hinn for God's work. After crusades in Russia and Sweden in July of 2003, Pastor Benny apparently didn't get on his private jet, fly west, and go home. Instead, he flew from Sweden south to Italy, then back north to England, with an entourage that included his son, his daughter, and her fiancée. There were expensive meals, like this one for more than $900 in Italy, and one at this Lebanese restaurant in London for more than $1,700. And check out these hotel bills. In Italy, transportation charges of more than $6,000. In London, another $6,000 for incidentals, such as chauffeur services and in-room tea. The documents also list tips. In 3 days, more than $4,500 worth, including $1,000 to a concierge and another $1,000 to a desk manager. And then there were Pastor Benny's hotel rooms. In London, the documents show, Hinn stayed at the exclusive Lanesborough Hotel. The hotel confirmed for us it was Suite 210 and told us that they never discount rooms. The going rate, the hotel says, more than $3,000 a night. And then there was Pastor Benny's hotel room in Milan. According to the expense documents, room 1001. The hotel confirmed it's the presidential suite. The hotel website says the room is fit for a prince and the largest hotel suite in Europe. Among its 5,400 square feet, 3 bedrooms, a formal dining room, a fireplace, a jacuzzi, a sauna, a Turkish bath, a large terrace with a panoramic view of the city, and a 100-foot-long swimming pool decorated with marble and frescoes. The hotel told us this room rents for more than $10,000 a night. No discounts. The documents we saw do not include the cost of the ministry's jet and its pilots, the rooms for the other members of the Hinn entourage, or the salaries of Pastor Benny's security staff. But all the charges we did find for the trip were explained in the documents as a layover. In its email to us, the ministry said that Hinn uses a private jet for security reasons, and that it's often necessary to make layovers to refuel his plane, and for the pilots to rest.
If he travels somewhere like that, and stays in expensive hotels and charges off thousands and thousands of dollars as a business expense, is that allowed?
It is allowable to have a layover. It's deductible by a business. However, in most instances, you don't take a lavish spending spree.
Hinn's CEO told us that Pastor Benny continuously reconciles every dime of his personal spending with the ministry. But the ministry did not provide us with any details of what that includes. But even if Benny Hinn does reimburse his ministry every penny of what he spends on himself, theologians like Michael Horton are still skeptical of his lifestyle.
Certainly a Christian who lives a lavish lifestyle as an ambassador of Christ is going to understandably have eyebrows raised.
Needless to say, we had many questions for Pastor Benny. What would he say when we finally caught up with him?
Just one question.
He had his reasons for not talking.
Coming up next, Benny Hinn tells his side of the story. Why won't he make his audits public? What does he spend his money on? The conclusion to the story. Stay with us. And now the conclusion to our story. Pastor Benny Hinn, you may have known him on TV. Now he tells his side of the story about what he spends and why he won't make his audits public. Here again, Bob McEwen.
As we said in our first report in 2002, the Hinn ministry relies on the cash that comes in at Pastor Benny's crusades. And since then, according to the documents we obtained and ministry insiders, there is also a great deal of cash going out. According to these receipts in 2003, much of it apparently went to Benny Hinn and his family members. This petty cash check $1,300 to Hinn's daughter Jessica, no reason given. And this one, $2,550 to her fiance for watching Joshua, Pastor Benny's son. Steve, Benny Hinn's security man, says he witnessed cash going to Hinn's family on a regular basis.
That's a real common practice. Gasoline, maybe some spending money for one of the children.
So this is the ministry effectively paying money for totally unrelated activities by his kids.
And him, and his wife. That's the family in whole.
Sure enough, according to the expense documents, in just over a month in 2003, more than $23,000 of ministry cash was dispensed to Pastor Benny and his wife, who's also a ministry employee. And we found this record showing $25,000 in cash dispersed to accompany Pastor Benny and for a crusade in Anaheim, California, just 30 miles from his house. Forensic accountant Keith Balla.
Well, the big question is, why would he need that kind of cash? If you're a salaried employee, the company pays all the invoices directly that they receive for all business-related expenses, what do you need cash for? Most people don't carry that kind of cash in their pocket.
In its email, the ministry told us that Hinn's daughter and now son-in-law are both currently ministry employees. It also says it's common practice for ministers, musicians, politicians, and dignitaries to travel with cash, especially overseas, and that every dollar is accounted for. If this were Enron or a similar corporation, would this not be a big deal to the IRS?
Not only to the IRS would it be a big deal, it would be a public outcry on the shareholders.
Oh, Anthony.
It's not just Pastor Benny, it's all of these big ministries. They start believing that they are special, and all of that ministry money is their piggy bank.
Through his lawyers and spokesmen, we were told Benny Hinn would only speak to Dateline in an unedited format, or if the ministry had editorial control over the interview. This is how Pastor Benny explained it to his followers when he declined to speak to us for our first report.
You may have a question, by the way, on why I did not go on that program. Very simple. The Lord said, don't. I obey.
We wanted to ask Pastor Benny about his ministry's finances and about all those miracle healings, especially Williams, the little boy from Las Vegas with the incurable eye condition.
Hello, how are you, Pastor Benny? Nice to meet you.
Last August, he also declined to be interviewed for a story I was working on for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. So we approached Pastor Benny after a crusade in Toronto, and we recorded the encounter with a hidden camera. Why will you not audit and publicly release your finances, and why will you not, if you indeed you do, as you say, verify miracles, why will you not release that medical information? Well, we've talked about this before, and you have not gladly sat. I asked Pastor Hinn about William. You remember the little boy named William in Las Vegas? Was that a verifiable miracle? Then Pastor Benny explained that he relies on his staffers to tell him about the people that appear on his stage.
When he comes up on a platform, I'm only able to know what happened because they tell me so.
But isn't that the point, that they don't know, and neither do you?
They'll check as much as possible in the line. Let's talk on camera.
He wasn't happy when I told him we were already recording our conversation. We've been on camera.
But the thing is, I think it's more proper if I can sit with you in a studio, have the questions, answer them honestly, and then that's it. But I think to come, at midnight or whatever time it is right now really is thinking.
Sir, I've been asking you for an interview for 3 years.
Well, I did not.
And I'm still waiting.
Thank you. I'll call you.
Pastor Benny didn't call. As for TV producer Nathan Daniel, who says he asked too many questions, the ministry told us he's a disgruntled employee and was fired for cause. And what about this Hinn security man? He still does work for the ministry and says he remains disenchanted.
And when you see the people that I've seen giving their last dollars so that their sick child or that their sick father or mother or daughter can get healed by Benny, that's absolutely wrong.
Forensic accountant Keith Balla thinks Hinn's followers should speak out.
People should be up in arms and ask for an accounting, an audit, internal controls.
But what about the Internal Revenue Service? Doesn't the government demand an accounting? The IRS does not require a church to make its finances public or to pay any taxes. But Christian theologian Michael Horton says it's not just about following the regulations, but about the ministry's message.
Their message is a message of greed. It is a message of selfishness. In very obvious, ribald, clear, crass terms. And they are living accordingly.
And what would Christian watchdog Ole Anthony like to say to Pastor Benny?
Your ministry is based on lies. And it's time to begin telling the truth, because you're going to have to meet your maker soon.
In the meantime, Benny Hinn and his ministry keep thriving. His TV show is seen 5 days a week on hundreds of stations. His worldwide crusades continue, and the money keeps rolling in. And through it all, Pastor Benny maintains that he has truth and God on his side.
Look at these eyes. I have never lied to you. Never. I never will. I'd rather die than lie to God's people.
We should point out that many other well-known evangelical organizations do voluntarily publish at least some of their financial information, even though that's not required by the IRS. To learn more about that, or any of the organizations in our story, and to find out how some of your favorite charities are spending your donation dollars, visit our website. The address is dateline.msnbc.com. That's all for this edition of Dateline Sunday. We'll see you again for Dateline Friday at 8, 7 Central. I'm Stone Phillips, and for all of us at NBC News, good night.
And that's Give Me a Break for this Saturday going to Sunday. We'll see you for a special New Year's Eve edition of Give Me a Break Sunday. For all of us here at YouTube and Give Me a Break. Sorry we didn't have time for a viral break, but we'll have that for you. We have that for you on New Year's Day. Good night, everyone.